You know there's free tutoring, right?
Yeah.
All life has 6 functional traits. Hey, the reason I put 6 in red is I want you to know 6. The textbook has 5. I added the 1 on the end there because every living thing that we know of uses DNA to store genetic information. I said that we know of. Sure, they might discover something that they haven't yet. Are we down with this? Everything has to be able to grow, right? Everything reproduces. Homeostasis means maintaining internal body conditions. Here, body conditions could be, you try to keep them at about the same temperature, about the same. You go up north and it gets too cold, what do you do to do homeostasis? Right. And if you're somewhere where it's too hot, what do you do to maintain homeostasis?
Endocrine glands.
What?
Endocrine glands.
Oh, there you go. Yes, very good. Very, very good. That's someone who's taking anatomy too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. All right, but yeah, you sweat, you will vasodilate, so, which endocrine causes, so that you can radiate heat off of your skin. Hey, what does an alligator do when it's too hot? It goes in the water, it goes in the shade. That's still maintaining homeostasis. It's still trying to maintain internal body conditions. Are you down with that? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. The ability to sense and respond to stimuli, ability to obtain and use energy. What are you noticing here? All of these things are the things I said viruses don't do. Remember? Yeah, that's why we say viruses are not alive. So let's go over these sheets really fast. Growth is increasing in size, right? Nothing surprising there. If you're a multicellular organism, it means making more cells. If you're unicellular, it just means getting bigger. All right. Reproduction, it's producing new organisms. Now, there are different ways to do this. There's asexual and sexual, okay? If you're doing asexual reproduction, all of the offspring are, unless you've made a copy in there, but they should be very similar, almost identical to the parents. If you're doing asexual reproduction, you shuffle the genes up. That's a big advantage. We'll talk about that in a second. So here we have 2 fun things. This is a hydra. It's related to a jellyfish. It's well related to a jellyfish or a coral or a sea anemone. That's a fancy way of saying it's an cnidarian. It has stinging cells. They're called nematocysts. But the fun part, the reason I'm mentioning it here, is that you're seeing the parent and you're seeing the baby. Whenever it's time to reproduce, they can, well, they're really cool. They can do sexual or asexual reproduction. They can go either way. And when they do asexual reproduction, the baby just boink, buds off and they're done. You know, plants do this all the time. You have a plant that'll grow a horizontal stem right at the level of the ground or just under the level of the ground. It's called a rhizome. Like here's a plant and there's another one just like it somewhere else in the lawn. This one. How many of you guys have seen this in your backyard? Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Flower pot snake, also called the Brahminy blind snake. The whole snake, you can curl them up on a quarter or a half dollar. They're tiny little things. The whole species is female. They don't need men. Just deal without. All the babies are exact genetic clones of the mother. There are other animals like that. The whiptail lizards in Arizona are that way. But what's interesting about it, these guys have a problem. What happens if the environment changes or new disease comes in? If it can wipe out one of you, it can wipe out your kids and your grandkids because they're all genetically identical to you. Very bad. Might be good to have some diversity, right? How do you get genetic diversity? That's the whole point of making babies the sexual reproduction. I know there's the recreational thing, that's not what I'm talking about. The reason, biologically speaking, for sex is that you can take, instead of having everybody identical, well, this child has this set of genes, some of them from dad, some from mom. This child, it's not identical because it's got a different set of genes. Yes, half of them are from dad, half of them from mom, but they're different set. This one, different set. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's like, well, Bob may die and Steve may die, but Sue's gonna survive! Our genes will be passed on to the next generation. Remember, that's how we keep score in biology, right? Right? Okay, so you'd say asexual, that's nice, but sexual is definitely a better way to go. Not necessarily. If there are no changes in the environment coming, and living is easy and there's plenty of food and there's not much competition, Why waste time looking for a mate? Boom! You got a baby. You've reproduced. It's simple. It's fast. So these Hydra have the best of both worlds. When times are easy, boink, 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 they just pop off babies. When times get hard, they come together and they have sex. So I do want you to know when sexual reproduction is useful and when asexual is useful. But I think that's on the study guide anyway, so you need. We're going over functions. Remember, homeostasis is trying to maintain internal body conditions even when the environment changes. Remind me later talking about how tuna are not really cold-blooded even though they're fish. It's really cool the way they do this. Sense stimuli and respond to it. Every living thing should be able to sense stimuli and respond to it. We have a parasitic vine, yeah, we've got it here, all over Circle B bar. That marshy area where you see all those orange vines, that's what those are. And the reason they're orange is they don't have photosynthesis going on. Instead, they attach to other plants and they grow their little parts down inside and they suck their sap and live off of it. It's pretty cool. And you can see they clearly are responding to their environment. I know, yes, all plants do, they follow the sun, but I didn't think you'd be impressed by that. And I can tell Tatiana's not impressed anyway, she's falling asleep. But I thought that was a pretty cool example that most of you wouldn't know about plants and would think was interesting. Plus, it's a Polk County example. It's not that it's supposed to be here, it's like an invasive pest weed that we have here, but we've got it. Check it out, there's a mushroom that's responding to the environment. This is a little worm, it's a nematode worm. And what you're seeing is a fungus that attacked a worm and it's eating it alive. The little worm, it crawls along and it'll bump in one of these little loops on the ground. Okay, you can see there's some, they're kind of faded out because of the depth of field, there's some in the back in there. If it crawls over one of those loops, or like this loop here, as it does, it triggers the fungus. And the fungus will flip the loop over, and then you can see it inflates it, it fills it up with water. And that has their parts, they're called hyphae. And it grows the hyphae into the worm and starts to digest it. And of course, the worm doesn't like that. It starts thrashing around, so it's going to trigger other ones. And it's going to get wrapped up in all these little things. And they're going to, yeah, it is exactly like the X-Files episode. If you saw it, when Mulder and Scully were underground. Would you agree? Fungus can respond to their environment. Plants can respond to their environment. Animals can respond. Living things respond to their environment. The ability to obtain energy and do work. This is metabolism. We talked about that in the last PowerPoint. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. That's metabolism. All living things do some form of metabolism. Number 6, living things use DNA. Every living thing we've found so far uses DNA. And unlike what Rosie said, no, they're not using arsenic. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. You will have to spell it on the next test. If a cell has a nucleus, hey, if it has a nucleus, it's one of those E-word things, yes, it's a eukaryote. Good. If it doesn't have a nucleus, it would be a what? A prokaryote, very good. So if you are a eukaryote, thing with a nucleus, that's where the DNA is. Mostly, yes, I know the mitochondria have their DNA. Yes, I know there's some DNA inside of a chloroplast too. But anyway, you need to know that a gene is part of a big long DNA molecule. A giant DNA molecule will be a chromosome. Okay? One little part of it is a gene. And it's the instructions for a specific trait. Usually, not always, that's instructions how to make a protein. But it might be instructions how to turn on or turn off another gene. I know what a gene is or what a chromosome is. I want you to know, I want you to understand what it means when I say that this is universal, redundant, unambiguous. Write these down. I don't want dictionary definitions, okay? When I say that the genetic code, that DNA is unambiguous, what that means is if I give you a group of 3 DNA nucleotides, say it's GAA, whatever, there is no question what amino acid to use. You know exactly what amino acid. When I ask this on an essay question, don't say, well, it means we know what it means. Tell me, it means that we know what amino acid to use. Good? That's how you get the point. If you just spit out a definition from an English class, I'm not happy. Nikki, what color is the folder there? Okay. Well, I'm going to go with red. But red, let's see, you could call it crimson, scarlet. There are a lot of synonyms for red. Do we agree? Mm-hmm. Yep. So there's some redundancy built into the English language. There's some redundancy in biology, in DNA. And what I mean by that, this is what you have to write down. There's more than one way to say use cytosine. There's more than one way to say use adenine. For almost any amino acid except methionine, there's more than one way to say use that amino acid. So I told you there's a group of 3 letters. There's more than one group like that for each amino acid, unless you're methionine. Are we good? Does that make sense? Yep. You will see that again, but it might not be on the first test. And universal is important. Remember I said every living thing has DNA? It's all written the same. The reason I have it mostly here, you can see this is a URL. You can click on it. It'll take you to a link. Variations on the genetic code, different genetic codes. They're almost all the same, but there are slight differences, and I'll show you what I mean. In the standard code, you have AUG, it's a start codon. It's the only start codon there is in the standard code. In this little yeasty thing, you could also start on a GUG instead of an AUG. There are a few very small exceptions, and instead of hiding that and saying it's all universal, I gave you a link to them. You can look at how similar or different they are. This is how universal it is. You could take the gene from a firefly, you know what makes their butt glow? It's a protein called luciferase. And you could put it in a tobacco plant. We know that because they've done it. It works just fine. It does the exact same thing in a plant, even though it's animal DNA. Okay? You could take this fish and put the gene from fire coral in it and change the color. And then you can buy them at Walmart. They call them glowfish. You can buy them at Walmart. Now we have some in the lab, if you haven't noticed. These are zebra danios. Some people just call them zebrafish. They're kind of like the white lab rat of embryology. They're a very common thing to use for embryology studies. But we've taken them and put fire coral genes into them. I put this green one right here. It has a very famous protein called GFP, green fluorescent protein. We got it out of jellyfish. No, it's found in other things too, but we got it out of jellyfish. I don't know where they got the yellow gene from. But yeah, these black and white fish, they totally changed up their colors, and they look so much better. Plus, if you hit them with a black light, they're like, whoa, intense. That's why they call them glowfish. They don't really glow, they fluoresce, but you know. But it's close enough that you can take a human gene and toss it into a bacteria, and it works just fine. In fact, I know someone, a former student, who I was talking about this, and she's like, oh, that's how they make the insulin that I use? She was diabetic. And she actually, I said, yeah, it's called human insulin. And she reached in her bag and she goes, oh yeah, human insulin. She didn't know, but in the old days, the way they used to keep people who needed insulin alive, they go to the slaughterhouse and say, I need 10,000 pancreases of pigs, and then they grind them up and try to extract the insulin. And it would be pig insulin, it wouldn't be exactly like the human stuff. And it would be insanely expensive because so many animals had to be raised and killed and slaughtered to get it. And so rich people would be okay and other people wouldn't. Kind of sucks. So they found a cheaper way to do it. You take the human gene out for the human insulin, the exact human insulin, you chuck it in some bacteria, you grow them in a vat, and they make insulin for you. Human insulin. Because the code is universal. Does this make sense to y'all? Mm-hmm. They get energy from the environment. This is going back to that homeostasis thing. But I want you to understand that we have producers, things. This should sound familiar. We talked about it in the last chapter, right? Mm-hmm. But it's in red now. So what's that mean this time? It's totally on the test. So producers, autotrophs that make their own food. Yeah, we talked about photosynthesis. We know it's mostly a plant thing, but we have our funky pea aphids too. You're down with that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. We know chemosynthesis. It's rare, but it happens like in the bottom of the ocean, deep sea vents. This is the exact weird method that they use in the bottom of the ocean. The short answer is they give off super hot sulfur. So then we have things that eat things. Those are our consumers, our heterotrophs. Do we agree? We talked about that before? Yeah, good. All right, hey, why viruses are not alive? We did that. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. Moving on. Hey, all viruses have at least 2 parts. Do we agree? We talked about that. Yep, good. Moving on. All right, so metabolism is the sum total of all the chemical reactions that are happening in a living thing. The goal is getting enough energy to power the bodies and maintain. I'm looking for an H word. Excellent. Homeostasis. That's okay. I've been bitten. Ow, he has teeth. Ow, ow, ow.